10 years you've been king, and yet not once have you asked me to be your hand.
Why would I do that?
Because I'm your brother.
Rhaenyra Targaryen, heir to the Iron Throne.
The dream was clearer than a memory. And I heard the sound of thundering hooves, splintering shields and ringing swords. And I placed my heir upon the Iron Throne.
I consider the matter urgent, that of your succession.
So, what is your advice, dear Otto? War is afoot.
We play an ugly game. You have the determination to win it. The idea we control the dragons is an illusion.
I, Rickon Stark,
I, Corlys Velaryon. I, Ormond Baratheon.
promise to be faithful
To King Viserys.
and to his named heir.
Rhaenyra Targaryen.
Dreams didn't make us kings. Dragons did.
That was a really good trailer.
It was definitely a really good trailer, yes.
It was a really, really good trailer, and I think definitely better than the show we watched. But welcome everybody. It's me, Mo Crosby, and I'm here with Roy, and we're going to be talking the House of Dragons. Oh, Dragon rather.
Whatever.
Okay. We are two. I would like to say, okay, I'll speak for myself. I'm not going to speak for Roy. I was a Game of Thrones fan, right? Song of Fire and Ice for 5 seasons, and then everything else just kind of killed it.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, Game of Thrones is the entire reason that I'm on this show. It's how I met Patrick. So, like about 10 years of my life, Game of Thrones fandom, from about 2010 to 2020. Game of Thrones fandom and related things. Like, I played the card game very seriously, traveled the country doing it, did a podcast on the card game, listened to tons of podcasts, participated in fan communities. Like, Game of Thrones fandom was like the dominant fandom of my 20s and early 30s. And so I have complex feelings about both this and Game of Thrones and how it ended. So,
Okay, so a question, right? Since you're way more steeped in the fandom in general, right? I'm like just a fan of the actual show itself.
oh yeah,
There's books and, as you mentioned, games. Where is this story?
so this story is set. They made it clear that it's about like 100-ish years after
172.
the initial conquest. So
Okay.
So like there's Aegon the Conqueror, who even the show fans will know, right? The guy who
Right.
founded the Targaryen dynasty, right?
Mhm.
Then like there's his generation of sons who kind of fought among themselves.
Right.
And then there was a king called Jaehaerys the Great,
right.
or the Wise. There's like lots of names. Who's like probably like the greatest Targaryen king, right? And he rules a long time. It's very happy.
Peacetime.
It has his ups and downs, but overall he's like a very good king. He reforms the realm, he centralizes things, really stabilizes Targaryen rule after sort of like a bad period after Aegon died.
Right.
And that sort of is where we start, right? The first scene in the movie is at the end, because what happens, like Jaehaerys' tragedy, is that all of his sons die before he does.
Right.
So that sort of leaves, and then a bunch of his grandchildren die as well. So that basically leaves sort of, I can't remember if Rhaenyra, I think, is his granddaughter. Yes.
Yeah, it's his daughter. I forget her name.
It's the son. So there's two heirs left. There's Viserys,
her.
Yep, who's his oldest granddaughter,
Right.
and then his like middle grandson Viserys. Yeah.
Right. Correct.
and sort of there's a big grand council where all the lords vote, and they vote to make Viserys king. And that's sort of where the story starts here.
Right.
Right, for misogynist, structural, patriarchal reasons. Yeah. I mean, there's lots of, if you read Fire and Blood, which is the fake history book he wrote, there's like more nuance to it, but that's basically the story.
So the show is very did a thing, right? It's like, okay, we're really about to show you what a super patriarchal kingdom looks like, and that's they lean super hard into that. I mean, from the tourney to the decision. Oh, by the way, if you haven't watched the show, stop right now, just because we're gonna.
I mean, to be honest, like I wouldn't say there's like huge spoilers. Right, this is entirely a setup pilot.
Yeah, it's 100% that
happens. Like if you're talking about like the overall plot of this part of Martin's backstory, like very little actually happens. This is like a paragraph.
Correct.
So we will spoil things if you're like, oh, I haven't seen the episode yet. Not a lot of like the forward action of what will
be because not exactly for me who hasn't read any of it. Right, just watching this as just an episode of TV, it's 100% a setup episode. Like they're letting you know things that happen here about to spill over. It did. Okay, now just to say something again, speaking for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like super burned on Game of Thrones, like oh my god, those last 3 seasons was 6, 7, and 8, the worst things I've ever seen for the show, because I'm not about to say the worst thing I've ever seen on TV, but for the show's standard in the first 5,
Battlestar Galactica.
For the show standard in the first 5 seasons, it was horrible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't touch anything that happened. So it was bad, and I was burned. And I said to myself, I'm probably never going to watch another episode of Game of Thrones. I haven't revisited the entire show starting from season 1 because of those last 3 seasons.
Same.
This first episode, though, okay, because it went right into it. There wasn't like a super like theme song. There wasn't like a 3-minute theme song from Game of Thrones, which I was expecting, but I didn't get. But
I'm sure we'll get that in the next episode,
of course. But I did hear the theme at the end, and I was like, "Dang, they got me!"
And then the theme that they had at the beginning was like it was kind of very John Williamsy, where it like had a little bit of it. Then they cut away, and they were saving it for the last moment. It was like
honestly, at the last moment when the theme came on, I was like, "Crap, they got me." I will say this: it was a beautiful episode to look at. It was pretty.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about I mean, the thing about Game of Thrones, like on a technical level, the show only ever got better.
Yes.
Like, I mean, you can like kibitz about the last season CG or whatever you want. But like generally speaking, like the show, like looking, production values, never went down.
They spent the money.
And you can feel that here. Like I was joking with my wife, like particularly like the shots of the Red Keep and stuff. Like and the dragons, right? The dragons, they all look even much more beautiful than they did.
A lot more beautiful, yes.
Like all the previs work. So they have all the previs work that Game of Thrones did. Plus they had the 2 or 3 years since the show ended to do all of the work to make it look really beautiful. Now, I bet the subsequent seasons will not look as good once they're producing like one a year, but they really did use the run-up time
and
to make this look beautiful.
Yes. Yeah, you might be right. Like season 4 of this might dip in production, but hey, by that time,
I mean that's just what shows do, right? Like
they
by that time have like a lacuna.
Yeah, by that time you're either in it or you don't give a shit about the show. But I'm guessing again. So now so one more thing before we actually talk about the episode. Did this episode do enough to be like, you know what, we're sorry? This is gonna be a different experience.
No, for me. I mean, I'm gonna keep watching, but no. Like I think it had.
I was hoping you'd say yes because I didn't want to sound so easy.
No, I mean I'm gonna be like. I mean, I have a lot of feelings. We can dig into some of the things that were sort of turn-offs, I guess you could say, for me in this episode. But for me, it felt in many ways like sitting here. I actually liked it less as it's ended and more I thought about it. which is kind of very much like watching Game of Thrones again. So maybe
I
we're
know,
just
I
like
know,
episode ends, I'm like, oh, that was all right, and then I think about it, I'm like, oh no, and I think about it, I know. I think
Right.
so far it has a lot of the weaknesses of Game of Thrones,
Right.
the ultra violence, the grossness, the not choosing to pull away when they should pull away.
Correct.
And none of the good things about Game of Thrones were like you loved Jon and Dany and Tyrion, like
immediately.
None of those characters, like there's no one in here, like I mean it could also be because like I know Fire and Blood and what happened so well. Like Rhaenyra, like I want to like her. There's some choices that are made here that's like you know, I don't know. There's like I want to like Matt. There's like things I want to like, but I still feel the connection. Right? There is no Jon Snow here. Right? There, I guess Rhaenyra is kind of like Daenerys at home, but she will, you know,
she will become something different.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see where she goes. I don't want to like.
That's fine.
But even though she goes there, like I think the young actress is really good.
Okay.
Here.
Yeah.
I think all the actors are just about really good.
Okay.
I think casting Matt Smith as Daemon was a weird choice, but I think he's good.
Really?
I think he's more like the way the character described in the book. I view him as more of a fuckboy. Like while Matt.
Oh, you just can't see. You can't see. Doctor Who as
Matt Damon's more sly, right? Like to me, like he's not buff. He's not like to me, Damon's always like more of a Chris Hemsworth than a Matt Smith. Like, I think on an acting level, Matt Smith does a great job.
Oh,
don't get me wrong.
He's fantastic. Yeah.
But same with the guy who plays Viserys. Like acting through the whole show is really good. Again, a Game of Thrones strength. But,
great. So that's kind of where we're going into. As a matter of fact, like, what did you think of the actors and the acting? I mean, casting be damned, but like, what did you think of the actors and the acting, and which actor in this episode you felt like, okay, this might like I will watch another episode because of you? Like, who gave you the strongest performance?
The strongest performance, I think, is probably performance. It's probably the actor who played like Otto. I think played that sort of like nicer Littlefinger better than like he's like nice finger.
Yeah, because I will almost agree with you, because what he did when with his daughter, sending her, that was sick, right? But
yeah, there's a lot of sick shit in this episode.
It's sick. It's disgusting.
Like sick. Like you won't. I don't like. It's hard. It's hard to talk about the second sickest thing that happens in this episode without knowing like what happens in Fire and Blood.
Oh shit!
The book.
Oh shit! Okay.
Like there's like there's work here to set up something like really gross, but but that's that's gross compared to the like physical grossness of what happens in the middle of the episode.
Oh, you mean the tourney?
Well, not the tourney. The C-section.
Oh, that was disgusting.
We fast forwarded through part of it. Like I couldn't take it. Like,
yeah,
I don't know how anyone.
I don't understand. Yeah, we'll go into the actual show and what happens in there in a minute. My strongest. I mean, I have to go. Like I said, I almost would agree with you, but I think it was Matt Smith playing Daemon. My weakest, however, is again, and I hate that it has to be him. Yeah, I hate that it has to be him. But I just didn't care when he was on screen. I don't remember a lot of what he was doing on screen, so I'm like, crap. But if I had
he's
to get
an important character that has a lot to do later, Mo. So he's not given a lot to do in this, right?
Yeah,
they don't do a good job of establishing who he is, because he's actually one of the most important like figures in Westeros at this time.
Interesting. Maybe so it explains probably why people were mad at him.
I mean, to me, that actually seems. Yeah, I mean, yes. People there's difference between like the racists and then like I couldn't judge him at this point, because like I felt that the fact that he didn't perform was mostly the show's fault. Like they didn't give him anything to do. Like think about like I'm trying to think about like an actor, like even like the actor who played like Jamie, maybe. Like there were a couple people who like in the pilot of like Game of Thrones weren't used super great. Like you wouldn't necessarily realize. I mean, like for example, like Rob. Like you wouldn't necessarily realize
definitely
that, like,
Rob was
the actor who played Rob
boring.
would later go on and do good stuff in the show, or
correct,
or even like later like Sam. Like there's like, let's see what they give him a little bit more material, because there's really good material with that character.
Yeah. So
later.
Okay, so we'll go with that. Now, in true Game of Thrones fashion, we have to have some dumb action. I think the dumbest piece of action on the show, or the dumbest action on the show, is the show of strength from Matt Damon when he rolls into the city with his was it gold with
Gold
his
cloaks, the gold
gold,
cloaks.
yeah, the gold cloaks, and they just run
Gold
through this.
cloaks.
I'm like, okay, really? Listen,
Did you need to see someone's penis be chopped off?
no, you didn't need to see. You didn't need to see
that-
any of it. Thief, none of that. You didn't need to see anything. Like, it's funny. We in shows, even The Witcher, we've seen someone's head get lobbed off, right? But on this one, they decide we're going to show you the penis, but we're not going to show you the head being chopped off. And I'm like, because they literally cut it as the sword slices down on the head, but you saw somebody's meat like.
Yeah, like I honest to goodness, there were honest to goodness 2 things in this episode. Like I was like, I never thought I would see on television, which is literally like honest to goodness, one of the grossest
Yes,
like C-section scenes. Like that's just like I don't know how a pregnant person or a person who was pregnant could watch that, and then a guy's dick get chopped off. So I guess the best thing to say is at least it went for both like men, like body horror for men and women. Like that's the best that can be said about this.
Right.
It was so horrific. Like, and
it's
unnecessary.
crazy though, because even in the actual show, the Game of Thrones, we never saw anything this crazy. I mean,
some stuff was a little crazy,
but they never. I don't think. Okay, so what was his name? He fed his brother he fed his brother and his mother to the dogs. They didn't show that.
They didn't show. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's some gross stuff with Theon.
The girl, what's her name, got burned. Baratheon's daughter at the stake. They didn't show that.
Did they not? I don't remember.
No, they didn't even show Sansa's rape from by what's his name? What's his name?
Littlefinger?
No, not him. The dude who fed his daughter, his brother and
Ramsay. Yeah,
Ramsay. They cut it right before and zoomed out.
Right.
So
I see this shows you my brain deleted. I tried not to think about Ramsay as much as possible.
I get it.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, they did show. You know what? I take it back. They did show a guy getting flayed.
They did show that. I mean, they showed some messed up stuff with the Theon stuff.
Yeah,
but I mean, the thing about Game of Thrones, right,
Theon stuff was definitely
they did do a lot of stuff by implication. They did do a lot of stuff by implication.
Yes,
but there was some gross stuff. Nothing
to the in all of the seasons of Game of Thrones. Nothing to the extent of seeing the C-section. That was I didn't watch that.
I fast forward through part of it. Like
I was like, you know what? Wow, this because it was implied that it was going to happen, and when I start to see it, I was like, are they really doing this? And so I'm like, you know what? I have a show to prep for, so let me just go do that. Let me do that instead.
It was fucked up. Like I was found it just like
yeah.
Like, and I honestly was like I'm fucking worked up as someone who has like
never and
my partner and I do not have kids right now. Like, but I was just thinking it's like I was thinking like my wife, no, excuse me, one of my coworkers and his wife liked Game of Thrones. I was like, they're watching this, but she's like pregnant. I was like, I don't know, like I'm sure Taylor will tell me tomorrow. So
okay, yeah, I would like to know. Maybe put that in the group chat. We're not going to talk about that on the show. So again, but that was a crazy scene. But the cringiest scene for me to watch, right, was when Otto sends his daughter.
That's up Allison. There. Yeah, that was really gross.
And I'm like,
still not the grossest. I can't tell you. We're gonna have to do a future episode, and I'll tell you what I viewed as the second grossest scene
because it set something up.
Yeah, because once what happens later on. I'm assuming it has to happen later in the season. So
okay,
then we can talk about why.
You know what? Okay. So I hope it's not. I really, truly, I hope it's not him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just hope it's not them.
No comment. I'm not gonna.
Oh my god. Okay. You know what? Because nope.
We can talk later. We can talk. We can talk in a future episode.
Okay. Let's do that.
But yeah, to me that was the third grossest scene. So number one to me the C-section scene and the C-section combined with the penis. Like
Right.
we could just put those together.
Yeah,
Like, that was
just
like
unnecessary shit to show on TV. Yeah.
yeah, like I didn't gain anything. It's like, oh hey, did you know that Game of Thrones can be violent? It's like, yes, I did know. I watched the whole series, and
Right.
I read all of the books, including the supplemental books. All right, I brought like my fucking inflatable Fire and Blood. Where is it?
Wait. This is a supplemental book.
Yeah, it's his supplemental book, yeah. Called
Okay.
Fire and Blood. So he literally wrote a fake history. Well, he and two of his like kind of friends wrote a fake history book.
Oh.
And so parts of it are written by them, and then Martin like inserted like huge text that's directly written by him. So he gave his notes over to them and they turned it into a history book. And then there's these like inserts of that are by a maester that are like literally from Martin. Like and he wrote this story, like wrote this. He both wrote a short story that's in a book that's called oh my god, something Princess into Something. And then he expanded that and put it in Fire and Blood.
Okay.
He wrote that, the Aegon's Conquest, and one other extended part that I can't remember what it was.
Okay. Well, the one other thing I wanted to talk about right before we got to this point was the reason I think they got me right is because there's no D&D, but the thing is right. So I was thinking about there's no D&D in this, right? But then I am scared because I feel like their blueprints would be in. Because I feel like it'd be hard for me to watch Game of this without like trying to like picture it through Game of Thrones like eyes, right? Because again, if we look at the violence in this, right, compared to like that, we're already doing that. I'm like, D&D had nothing to do with this, but for some reason, I felt like watching The Eternity felt like watching something D&D put together. Don't remember which fight it was. When what's his name? The Hound was defending was killing the thieves, right? That wanted to that fight felt again, but I guess because that's the Hound and it's huge, so that fight felt something like I was watching. But when he took Dude's face off, I'm like, first of all, what? Second, this feels like something that we've seen before, right? So it in my head, I can't watch this show without thinking D&D are in it, even though I feel like they have me because they're not in it, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Like, I think there's a tension here, right? Like, I think the basic formula of Game of Thrones was set by D&D, like as a TV show, and they can't escape it entirely. But I felt like this didn't feel entirely like D&D. You can see it in small ways, like the fact they let characters with similar names exist, right? Like for example, I still cannot ever truly understand this, that they changed Asha, which is Theon's sister, to Yara in the show because Asha was too close to Osha, the wildling that's friends with Bran and them, who they later write off. Anyway. Right. They changed like a really important character's name, like to make it clearer to audiences. Right, but that's not what they do here, right? There's Rhaenyra and Rhaenys and Visenya and Viserys. Like they're much more loyal to Martin's source material, and that's going to end up probably having strengths and weaknesses that are somewhat different than D&D. Like, and some of the tropes of like D&D are not quite present yet. This is way more plot driven than Game of Thrones was to me, because Game of Thrones, like a lot of its tropes was, and particularly in the middle years, both for good and ill, was just sort of like let characters play off each other, like to write actors stuff for them to then chew on, and then you would just like get these scenes that are just like characters interacting, which was frequently really good because the acting was so good in Game of Thrones,
right?
But also created issues for them, where Game of Thrones felt very like something really big would happen in the first episode. And something really big would happen in the last episode, or the second to last, like really actually episode 7, right? Because that was always the big battle. Yeah. And then there'd be the aftermath, right? Yeah. So it was like 6 episodes, nothing happened except characters just talking to each other. Like, and that didn't quite feel present here. Like this felt like very set up and nothing happened, but it felt like it was setting things up for things to actually happen, which Game of Thrones frequently didn't feel like, to me at least. Even in the good seasons. But, so like I feel like D&D set the template, but I felt more Martin in this than I felt particularly the second half of Game of Thrones. Really, actually all across. Like I feel like Martin has a more of a hand on the tiller
Mhm.
for good and for ill than he ever had in Game of Thrones.
Okay. All right.
If that
So
makes any sense to you.
yes, it actually does, because I feel like maybe early Game of Thrones, like the first 2-3 seasons, Martin might have been like way more involved, which I think could happen here. You know, the first 2-3 seasons here or 3 seasons here, and he's like super in it, and then boom, you know.
I mean, to be honest, there's not enough material to do more than 4 seasons of this show.
Interesting.
And I think that's something that HBO kind of like wants.
So they want to keep it tight and
not overstay its welcome.
Like,
because they have other shows like in development now, right? They have the
correct.
John one.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they do the sequel.
Like let's not even like think about that's a future
right.
And then there's another one that they're working on that I can't remember. Because they canceled the White Walker one wisely.
Great.
And then there's another one that they're working on. So
interesting. All right. Well, so now, dang, I feel like the question I do want to ask you, I feel like is a little spoilery, so I'm just gonna not ask that. How did you feel about the plotting of this episode?
I think it has it. I think it was good. I think it's hard to say. So they have 10 episodes, right? So like, there's a part of me that like, because again, so much of me is like thinking about what they want to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, there's a big conflict coming. There's going to be a civil war. That's not a spoiler to say, right?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. And like,
they literally say it
before the Civil War here, right?
Right.
And the question is like, what do they want? Like, what is the season going to end in? Is the season going to end with the Civil War beginning? Is it going to start in 3 episodes? Like, I think as a self-contained unit, I thought the plotting was fine. And they did a really good job of like setting up some characters really clearly. Viserys, Daemon, Rhaenyra, and Otto. I think Alicent is actually the character who is like the least what her internal motivations are is a little not clear here. I think it's mostly settled by like the actresses at performance. Actually, think the teen actors I think both teen actresses here.
Both teen actors, yeah, fantastic.
I would not, if I were their parents, have agreed to let them be in this show, but I understand money and like prestige, but definitely would not like. But like I thought both actresses were very strong.
I mean, I think they're here for like 3 episodes max, right?
Not even that. I mean, well, again, it depends on how much time they're going to give this era. Because this is again the pre-era. There's still like a lot of things that have to happen for them to all start fighting each other.
You called it a paragraph.
Yeah.
I feel like he had too much shine for him not to do anything, right? For him not
Christian
to
Cole.
Yeah. So just go ahead and they didn't say anything.
He is an important character in the future.
All right. That's it. I guess that's all we get.
Yeah.
Because he had way too much shine. He beat Daemon. Like, come on now. And nothing happens, right?
Yeah, he beat up on Daemon. Yeah. No, I mean, he's an important character. I don't think that that's like a real spoiler. Like, you'd have to be... Your viewing comprehension would be pretty low. They spent a lot of time with that guy for him not to be important in the future. And he is.
Right. So. Yeah,
I think actually the only character that... Well...
you
don't spend a lot of time with her.
No, she didn't get any time.
But
I mean, she did get the one guy that asked for her tribute or whatever did get knocked off his horse, like really bad. So it kind of looked really bad for her in the moment. But her husband got a lot of screen time. A lot of screen time.
Because he's like they're both very important, but he in particular, like I think his family is like the second or third most important family in Westeros at this time. So they're a family that is descended from other Valyrians, not dragon riding Valyrians.
Right.
So they're very close to the Targaryens. They've been close to the Targaryens since before the conquest. So they were some of the earliest supporters of Aegon. And he's also the person who runs their navy. which is why you have him giving that speech about Navy stuff, right?
The port, the port, and all that
the
stuff.
port. Right? So he's very politically powerful, economically powerful, and then of course his wife is cousin to the king, almost was queen herself. Like their children are later important in the plot. You kind of see them off in the corner.
During the tourney.
The tourney, they're very important, like in the future. So like they're an important family, and they're definitely people to keep an eye on.
Okay. I do appreciate the show. Again, I think you spoke on it a little bit, but I do appreciate the show opening with the dragons, with the dragon rather. Cyrax.
Yeah. No. Cyrax is Craxes is Daemon. Cyrax is Rhaenyra's.
Rhaenyra's, yeah. So I do appreciate and so
now I can
we see what's his name again? Cyrax. So Cyrax. He did. He was the one who cremated the brother and mom, right?
The queen,
yeah. So still, again, that's such a shitty way to send someone off in the show.
She was an actress, though.
Yeah, she was for like the 2 minutes she was on the show, and we have to. I feel like I have to talk about, or I have to give a nod to the connection they decided to draw between. They're like, okay, this is the one and only time, or maybe the one and only time we're ever going to talk about the other show that you guys know. So, A Song of Fire and Ice. We're just going to do that real quick. Boom, moving on. So, I mean, I did. It was. I thought. Okay, so my impression of what happened now was like, damn, that's kind of shitty. Like you're telling your 13-year-old daughter that you're gonna make her like, you're gonna name her as your heir, and then on top of that, you're like, oh, this is all what you have to watch out for, and this is what you have to pay attention to, and everyone is gonna be gunning for you. By the way,
the world is also gonna end soon, and you and our family are the only way to stop it. Peace, girl. Have a good time.
I'm like, yo, no, I thought that was it was a cool scene, but it was I felt like, yo, that's just shitty, because now it's like all these knives in my back, right? That you literally just put a huge target on my back. Plus, so on top of that, I have to be aware of the end of the world, which is not going to come for another 100 years, but it's on my little 15-year-old.
200 years.
Right. It's now you're just gonna put that on my teenage head.
Yeah.
Right. Does she? Oh, crap. Does she sit on the Iron Throne? Oh,
I mean, that's a huge spoiler. Like, I mean, I guess it's like, all right. Do you want me to give you? I'll give you So this is. I kept saying this to Patrick in the chat today. I was like, This is basically a like reskinned version of the English Anarchy, which is a period of time in English history that Martin like literally ripped this from. So if you want to like spend 15 minutes with the Wikipedia entry about the English Anarchy, you'll get the outline of what's going to happen. It's not a 1-to-1 in this,
but it's
like it gives you a sense of like what's going to
happen. So something finally made me happy about watching the show. I'm like, there's no way someone sits on the Iron Throne without cutting themselves, right? No fucking way. And
no,
Viserys did. And I was like, like finally, this makes fucking sense, because all those swords on that fucking chair, like maybe not your ass, but you will cut yourself somewhere, right? And he did.
Oh my God, Mo! It's like it's such a forced metaphor, though. Like it's like Martin is always like, but he cut himself on the Iron Throne. And it's like, oh my God, that means he's a bad ruler. It's just like, oh my God.
Yeah, right.
George,
but
you know, this right here.
Speaking of Viserys, I think they did a good job of showing. The actor did a good job of showing someone who has the weight of the dream, and who also has the weight of the fact that his father, right? His grandfather?
No, it was his grandfather.
Grandfather was a peaceful king. Like you don't want to die.
Like, not just the peaceful king, but like
the king,
the greatest king of the Targaryen.
Right.
Like Aegon did the conquering, but Jaehaerys did like why people like the Targaryens.
Right. So yeah, I felt like he had a good job, and then he did a good job of showing, both like pressures. That's why he wanted an heir to come from him. That way, because I guess doing it the way they do with the council naming an heir always leaves room for fights, right?
Well, they don't explain this because there's not enough time to explain this. But like literally, the only reason they did the council was because like all of his sons were dead.
Okay,
but like they because he and his wife ruled for so long that they outlived all their children, except right.
Sheesh.
And their sons all died like tragically. Like one was like murdered by a bunch of bandits. Another one like died in a like fighting pirates. And another one like died like it was just like all these tragedies. So it was only their grandchildren, right? So there's no direct heir, and so that's why they had to have the council, because there was a girl or this guy who was kind of like further down the timeline.
He almost kind of looked like he didn't want to. He didn't want it.
He wasn't raised to be the king,
right? Like he took it and he was like, you know what, I'm a guy and I'm a king, I guess.
Yeah, it's better. I mean, very few people are gonna be like, sorry, no.
Right. It was funny though. He did kind of count his chickens before they had count his chickens or his eggs with the whole tourney. Like, oh, we're gonna celebrate my son for a day. I still think it was like, again, this is why I feel like this is another reason I feel like they got me, right. Damon's speech that we never got to hear, right? The whole like, let's just, grab a glass for the king for a day. I feel like it's the most foreshadowing, like it's such a foreshadow. Like it was a foreshadowing that Damon was gonna get kicked out. It was also a foreshadowing like Damon is probably gonna, like, you don't have to tell me, but I feel like Damon is one of the heads. Heads are gonna be butting, and I feel like Damon is one on one end.
I mean, that's not a spoiler. It's
right.
Spend Matt Smith money. You don't lock Matt Smith into like a 4-season contract.
Sheesh.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't think there's. Did we miss anything? There's something.
I think we talked about most of the major stuff. Like, it's hard to talk about a lot of this in a not like truly full spoiler way, and I don't want to ruin any experience for you, Mo. Of like,
I mean, I'm going to go wiki
wiki of Ice and Fire.
Yeah,
they're gonna get more hits than ever. But I think that, like, I mean, fundamentally though, like I felt like this was a show that I watched. Like I wanted, like, there's part of me that like wanted to love it. There's part of me that wanted to hate it. I ended up not loving or hating it. Like, there are parts of it that I really found repulsive. And there are other parts that I was like, this is really well executed. But there was nothing that like grabbed me. Like I loved Dan and Johnny, like both in the books and on the show, right? And I cared about the Starks, right? And then like, but there's nothing for me like this in here. And for me, that's like makes this a fundamentally hollow experience. I'm gonna keep watching episodes. I'm happy to talk. I'm excited to talk about them with you, and other people. But like, just for me, it's like,
we're always welcome to do that. But I so closing out, my hopes is it does get meatier, right? Because I don't want to come do another one of these and you're just like, I don't know, because I feel like it's gonna start getting a little. If that's how we're going, I feel like it's gonna get a little difficult for you to commit to talking about it.
Oh, I'll commit. Like, I'm watching it, like, because you can't. Like, I can't not watch it. Because too many people in my life, and people are gonna ask me about it, like, because like they know, particularly like colleagues. It's like when they do the icebreaker, people are like, "What's something people don't know about you?" My ass used to spend way too much money flying around playing Game of Thrones and card games. They're like, "What?" And then like, "Oh, you love Game of Thrones," so they're gonna ask me tomorrow. It's like I can already I already imagine the people I know are gonna be like, "Did you watch this, Roy?" So like, I'm watching this shit. So and I love talking to you, Mo. So
love that. But no, yeah. So my hope again is that it does get meatier though. But I did like it, not love it. I liked it, not loved it. But just like, okay, wow, this. It doesn't. You're right. It doesn't feel like the first 2 episodes, or even the first episode of Game of Thrones. Right? There's no Starks for it doesn't feel like. I don't know who the hero of this one is. Everyone kind of feels like they're out for something. Everyone. This feels like every like after what's his name's death, Joffrey's death, when everyone started scheming. This kind of feels like that, that mix of it. Like everyone is And I think they did a great job when his wife died. When Otto called the meeting or the council, and they did a great job of letting us know that this is what this show is going to be about, tussle for power. So,
yeah, I agree with you, Mo. I think this show is actually closer to what people imagined Game of Thrones was. Like a lot of people
Right.
like to pretend that there weren't like protagonists and heroes in Game of Thrones,
right,
like that
right,
Jon wasn't one, or Sansa and Arya, and to a certain extent Tyrion and Dany weren't like just straightforward fantasy heroes.
right.
But this show doesn't have any of those people, for good and
No.
for ill. Like a lot of the grimdark lovers are gonna just be
Mhm.
like, yeah, there's no Aragorn, right? Like it's all, you know, gray through. But I
Right,
think that that does run with its own risks of, you know, not having necessarily characters that you can immediately grab onto and cheer for.
right, right. Definitely. But I think with what they've shown in this episode, I feel like there will be women out there rooting for Rhaenyra. I just have a feeling, or even yeah, because you know they did set her up as the child who never got anything from her father, and in the one moment of when her father's like, okay, I've neglected you, but guess what? You're about to be my heir, and it's like, oh my god, everything is fixed. It's not really, but you know,
We'll see in future episodes.
right. So again, I am gonna be here every weekend, every Sunday for this show. I'm gonna be here every Sunday. We're gonna do this. We didn't really set a date yet, so maybe Mondays, right?
Monday might be better, yeah.
Yeah, but I am excited and hopeful for the House of Dragon. Hopefully, you know, again, there's more to love. Hopefully, there's more to love, right? That's
Yeah.
what I can hope for.
There's
You
more going for.
probably know that there's definitely more to love, but hopefully there
There
is
is,
more
Mo.
to
There,
love.
if you want the political intrigue, there is a lot in the future.
Right, of like what Game of Thrones was supposed to be,
Yes.
what I felt like it was for half a season, really, and then it just became a muddy, just everything was just mud. But no, thank you very much, Roy. Thank you for making the time.
Always.
We will catch you on Thursday, right? Yeah, we'll be back on Thursday. No, Wednesday. Sorry, we'll be back on Wednesday.
Thursday. That's when
Thursday.
Yeah, they moved She-Hulk to Thursday because it temporarily overlaps with Andor, which still gets to be on Wednesdays.
Okay, so see you. So wait,
See you Thursday for She-Hulk.
See you okay, so it's Thursday for She-Hulk, and Andor doesn't come for like another week.
2 weeks, I think.
Okay, yeah,
Middle of September, I think.
Yeah, so see you Thursday. See you back here again.
Thursday, Sunday.
Right.
Thursday, Monday.
Woo!
More it's quite healthier for me.
Right. Anyways, thank you again, Roy. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. We're gonna be doing a lot. We'll catch you on the next one.
10 years you've been king, and yet not once have you asked me to be your hand.
Why would I do that?
Because I'm your brother.